Hi everybody, welcome back to MUFCRDNCR's review of 2020, the calendar year that was for Manchester United. We have briefly touched upon the effect that Bruno had once he came on, and now we'll be looking at the games that we had post-lockdown, where the real effect of Bruno and Pogba partnership, along with the we had in Greenwood, Rashford, and Martial came to the fore. So, as we did last time, so I'll go to Prasham and Priyan. What do you think, or rather, how do you think the post lockdown games panned out in how Oli approached these games in terms of the gameplay or in terms of the selection we had? Because there was a rife argument everywhere that how would Pogba and Bruno settle in United's team?
Yeah. So I think that the post-lockdown period, I think, was sort of a very, very good roller coaster for us. I'd say there were some very high highs and some sudden dips that we didn't expect in games that we had to win, and we just couldn't get the result until the last day against Leicester. Maybe we could have avoided that entire drama. But I think the way Oli set up was very interesting. Obviously, Bruno was the focal point and he was the fulcrum around which the team sort of revolved. But I think there were a couple of other players that played a very important role. I think Matic was a very key player that went under the radar a little bit, and he's copped up he's copped a lot of abuse this season. But last
Right.
season, I think he played a very important part in us finishing third because he allowed Bruno and Pogba to play together. He was the base that sort of allowed that to happen. And I think the best example of this is the goal we scored against Brighton on the counter that
Yes.
Mason Greenwood, I think, that we scored on the volley. Bruno scored on the volley of Greenwood's cross. I think that's the best example of that goal because Matic releases that ball. We don't see Fred or McTominay with that ability to do that. So I think Matic was a one very important sort of pillar, the base that moved into the defense as a back three and allowed the wing backs to play more freely and Pogba and Bruno as well to play more freely. The other player, I think, was the other thing that was fantastic was the emergence of Mason Greenwood. I think he
Mhm.
absolutely took the entire Premier League and the entire sort of fan base by storm. We knew that he was a good player. The comparisons to Van Persie were out there. But what he did and what he produced was phenomenal. And I think here Oli deserves a lot of credit because a lot of people were saying that, oh, why aren't you playing him? Why aren't you playing him? He kept giving him the sort of short bursts. And then finally, when he started him, he gave him a huge rope and he gave him a long run of games. And I think he flowered really well. My only sort of disappointment with that sort of period was that we bottled every important game except one, which was the Leicester game. We lost three
Right.
semi-finals. We didn't turn up at all. Bruno Fernandes included, he didn't turn up. The entire team looked down and out. We didn't know what we were doing. That was also paired with sort of mistakes by David De Gea in key moments. And then in the Premier League as well, that draw at Southampton and at Crystal Palace, where we weren't able to produce the result, which would have sealed sort of third place for us. We wouldn't have had to take that game into the last week. I think those key moments, I think, have continued on as well, and sort of the team is not able to come together when it's most needed, and that is a worrying point that continues. And even Bruno has not been able to solve that problem, which goes to show that one player or two world class players cannot help you win trophies. You need more of them. So that was just one pain point I felt where we could have been better and we could have won a trophy. We had the team to do it, especially in the EFL or the FA Cup, but it didn't happen for us, unfortunately. But apart from that, I think Matic, Bruno, and Mason were definitely shining lights.
All right. All right. So Priyan, when Prasham says that we bottled a couple of games, did you ever get the feeling that Oli was trying to, in any which way, trying to prioritize qualifying for top four, or was he at fault in terms of going gung ho for all the trophies that we were still in with a shout for, very well knowing the limitations the squad had, because. Yes, you're absolutely right, Prasham. We bottled, I think, Southampton. We drew 2-2. It was 2-2,
Yeah.
and I think it
Yep.
was West Ham where we drew 1-1.
Yeah.
It's Crystal Palace we beat away 2-0, as far as I can recall.
Yeah.
So, Priyan, what do you think? I mean, Oli just cooked up the entire team because he wanted to win everything.
I wouldn't go so far as to blame Oli for wanting to win a trophy because
Right.
he's had this media pressure and the pressure from all around. He's had this since the time he's come into the role that he's not good enough. He's a PE teacher, so all of that banter has always been on. So I think I wouldn't blame him for wanting to win a trophy. But what I would blame him for is the formations that he's played. We played three at the back when the team wasn't used to playing three at the back against Chelsea in the semi-finals.
Right.
And obviously that game was highlighted by De Gea's mistakes, but we were not very good going up front also because the team wasn't used to playing in that formation. I think this period was, like Prasham said, we had it showed our sort of over reliance on Bruno in a very short period of time. It sort of speaks very highly of Bruno, but also it shows that when Bruno doesn't perform, the team sort of crumbles. And So that happened in the three semifinals that we played. Also, uh, uh, Mason Greenwood, I think Oli, like Prasham said, Oli kept him, safeguarded him from the media and the direct. He didn't throw him into the fire directly. He let him gradually get up to pace with the league and the Manchester United football, and I think he's done a phenomenal job with him.
Okay. All right. I mean, I kind of agree with you because, like Prasham also said that, Bruno basically became that epicenter through whom everything moved. Beyond a particular point in time, I also found that Pogba, apart from 2 or 3 games where he won us a penalty against Spurs in the first game back after lockdown, and plus a few other games here or there sprinkled in between. Pogba with Bruno wasn't really consistent after about the first couple of games or first 3 or 4 games. But the funny side is, once we look at that post-lockdown phase, we went through a phase of games. I think it was 5 games where we scored more than 3 goals or won by a difference of 3 goals or more, something on those lines. And that showed the attacking potence that we as a team had. But then the defensive so-called gaps were beginning to get visible game after game. So, Pratik, I would come to you for this. Um, we had basically conceded barely
Hmm.
28 or 29 odd goals in as many games, which was 28 or 29 before lockdown. And since then, we conceded 10 in the other remaining 10 fixtures of the Premier League. But the defense came into a glaring so-called hole in the as was just mentioned by Brian, that our defense was found wanting against Chelsea in the semi-final. Plus, we bottled it against Sevilla in the Europa League as well, and everything was centered around the defensive frailties. And those defensive frailties started coming to the fore quite substantially. So, what do you have to pinpoint that towards, Pratik?
Yeah, I would say that what Ole, people are saying bottled. I don't think he bottled. What he tried to do was grasp too much in a particular, grab big bites rather than go for small bites. He should have targeted a certain cup or certain match, because you can't give him or other teams a chance to have a possession of the ball and try to win on the counter in cups. You can do that in the league well, but not in the cups. You have to get this game with the scruff of the neck, and I think that's what the situation was, that we were not able to dominate the ball in those games. And I think it still persists that we don't have the capability to win while we have the ball. We have the best team when it comes to the counter attacking part of the game. And what happened in the semifinals, we all know that he could have easily won it if there were teams that were allowing them to counter, but they were not. They were just sitting back, sitting back, and sitting back. And ultimately, when a team scores, they go on and try to score another one. And I think what happened was Ole didn't see that point. He thought what he can do was stay in the game for around 80 minutes and then try to win in the last 10 or something, which is not possible in
Right,
cups. You can't
right.
you can't do that in cups. You can do it in the league, but you cannot do it in cups. That's what I thought. And coming back to the point, in the Premier League, we considered a very less number of goals after the lockdown, but that was not due to the fact it was due to the fact that there were no fans, there was no pressure on the team, and something just clicked after the lockdown with the team.
Right.
Mojo,
So,
if I can just interject here for a second.
Sure.
What I feel is that with the defense, I think you raised a very valid point, but I feel the defense grew, I think, by 3 or 4 steps if you were to compare it to what we had in the previous season. What my pinpoint here was, I feel that against Sevilla and against Chelsea, we just refused to take the obvious chances we had. And I think Martial and Rashford have to put under equal responsibility for that, because I think that showed even in this season, which we will talk about, but in against Sevilla especially, we had so many chances, and if you don't convert it, teams like Sevilla, they're used to coming at you for 90 minutes, and they're definitely going to get a goal. So I think as much as we can put the blame on the defense, I think David De Gea, who I absolutely love, and I'm very glad he's been performing better, but David De Gea,
I adore him too. He's a legend.
Yeah. But along with him, I think Martial and Rashford for not converting the chances, I think need to be blamed equally as much as you might blame the defense. That's just my perspective on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess,
still, I'll say, if I can add to it, I'll still say that if you compare both Martial and Rashford, the difference I see is in the effort. One doesn't track back, one does. So that's why I think Martial gets a bit of an extra slack, I think. But as far as finishing is concerned, I think they're both at par. No one is better than the other at finishing at the moment.
Okay.
The finishing
Martial seems.
But the finishing part is you are right, but the missing chances which we are missing and which has continued with this season also. So and we can all see how we have performed when we are not missing the chances, and the other teams are taking advantage of that. So that's also an issue.
So Dhruv and Saim Bhai, just to put this question out to you both, Dhruv and Saim Bhai, that do you think that Oli was a little naive, albeit that I agree that he's a Manchester United manager and he will try and go for every trophy that's still there to be won. But do you think that given the limitations that our squad had, was he right to still keep challenging on all fronts and therefore compromise the entire team, because the players were beginning to get tired and there were players who were still being made to play despite having minor injuries? So what do you think?
I won't blame Ole for this. See, if we see the games after lockdown, our first game was against Tottenham. The shot Bergwijn took should have been saved by Daya, and we should have won that game.
Right.
The game we lost against Chelsea, that's the only game I'd say we were tactically not up to the mark because of the lineup. We changed the lineup. We were playing 4-2-3-1 consistently. We changed the lineup for that game. We played 5 at the back and we lost. And we had beaten Chelsea during three times, I guess, before in that season only.
Yeah.
So there was a little tactical blunder, I would say. But against Sevilla, if you look at the lineup, I see the only change I would do is I'd start Romero instead of Daya, because I feel Romero deserved to start the Europa League games. But it was actually Rashford and Martial who should have converted their chances, because from around the time 58th minute to 60th minute, there were a lot of chances which not even a single shot they could convert. I think we should have won that game by around 3 to 4 goals if we would have even converted half the chances we got. So I don't think.
So sorry to interrupt you. You know, when you say that we changed the formation against Chelsea in the semi-final to 5 at the back, was that a direct result of our front players being extremely exhausted and tired because of all the games they had played in a very short span of time, so that they had to revert back to not losing that game, try and not lose that game and try and hit them on the counter? So wherein the 4-2-3-1 that he was playing, had to be shelved for at least one game, because the Chelsea game, if I recall, came after 2 days of the previous fixture.
It may be, but more of what I think is because Chelsea was also playing 5 at the back, Ole probably thought it's better to play 5 at the back and hold the ball and try to win on counters.
Right.
That was his. Maybe that.
You don't win cup games on counter, yeah. But you don't win cup games on counter.
this is again going back to that point, right? If we had backed the result against Southampton, we wouldn't have to play the first team in the Premier League till the last day of the season. And I think that is a very... So had we won that game, then we could have probably gone on to at least play one final. I think the fact that we couldn't finish the Premier League off before the last day of the season cost us in the FA Cup, in the EFL, and in Europe.
I totally agree. You're absolutely bang on. That had one of those results come in well before the Leicester game, maybe he would have rested, the 4 or 5 usual suspects, and then put on a stronger team in the FA Cup and or the Europa. So yes, I totally agree with you, Prasham, on that one.
Yeah, and to continue on this point, we actually had a lot of chances to just cement that third place, because Chelsea were also fluffing their lines, Leicester was also fluffing their lines. It was us that we also drew with West Ham 1-1, then we drew with Southampton, and we couldn't just grab that third place until the very last.
What Chelsea did, we we were repeating the same thing. If Chelsea drew, we drew. If Chelsea lost, we lost.
Actually, yes.
I'm still kind of absolutely surprised with the drop off that Leicester had. They were some 12 or 14 points ahead of us.
14 points
happen.
For 14 points ahead of us when we started playing post lockdown, and they had a complete meltdown of a season. I don't know what happened there, but just to put this entire thing into perspective about the 2020 that it was till about the end of last season. I mentioned previously that we were sitting 18th. We were after 18 games, we were sitting 8th. God, not 18, man. What am I talking about? But we are sitting.
We're not Arsenal.
No. Let's not get that. There's enough time to banter Arsenal in our next round of discussions. But pre-Bruno 2020, when we started, we were sitting 8th, 25 points after 18 games. By the time we ended the season, we were in 3rd. We had clawed back 14 points, which were never heard of, and the lift off was such that when I shared this data point, we were at 1.38 points per game before Bruno came in, and we were at 2.05 points per game once Bruno signed. So that was a stark difference in getting a playmaker of a world-class standard to the team. So yes, the end of the season was about how Bruno changed us. The end of the season was about the euphoria of qualifying for the Champions League. Unfortunately, it was littered a little bit about losing the 3 semi-finals the way we did. And so in the next round of the video that we have, we'll be looking at, in which we'll be again looking at how the calendar year of 2020 has been for Manchester United. We will talk about the dreadful transfer window we had and the dreadful start of the season we had and where we are currently. So guys, I look forward to joining you again on the third part of the 2020 for Manchester United very, very soon.
Cheers.
Cheers.